Suppressors. I saw a congressman today say, is the assassin's lobby trying to get rid of silencers? Let's talk a little bit about that. Mickey with CarryTrainer.com. So today I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in our federal government and this idea that possibly suppressors will no longer be an NFA item. Little bit of background first. I'm not having this discussion as a guy that shoots guns. Before I was CarryTrainer on the internet, I was deeply involved in the political process of affecting, changing, and helping to manipulate firearms laws or abolish them here in my home state and some other places. I ran a non-for-profit called the Right to Carry Association and worked very closely at a local, state, and sometimes federal level on pieces of legislation. So I'm coming to you with that hat on today. I think it used to have a lot less gray hair underneath it, but that's another discussion. So I'm looking through the internet this morning, sipping on my coffee, and I'm seeing some different stuff out there. In this space, right, we've got a lot of people commenting, and they're pounding their chest saying, we're going to get it done. So Congress, the House side, just agreed to this new bill that in it would repeal that part of the NFA, making suppressors no longer something that you have to have a tax stamp for and go through the blessing of the ATF. Now, kind of interesting backstory. If we go back almost 100 years or more than 100 years, we like our booze in America, right? The world likes booze. There's a great documentary, by the way, called How Beer Made the World. I think that's what it's called. And it's a cool discussion about beer and alcohol as it fit into the world scheme. So prohibition comes about, right? The 18th Amendment, which for those of you that have this view of our republic where nothing changes, an amendment is a change to the Constitution. And the Volstead Act, the 18th Amendment, was a change. So all of a sudden, criminals do what criminals do, and they're like, people want to drink, let's keep giving them booze. So we get this huge like rise up of gangsters, right? Al Capone and those kind of dudes, basically making shit tons of money, moving booze and other things. But we see some machine guns used at the time. So Congress, 1934, creates the NFA, the National Firearms Act. And here's where stuff starts to get interesting. So today I saw a commenter said, F the Republican Party. They don't think that their gun stuff should be taxed. I have to pay for tax on my groceries, on my tampons, their words, not mine, or other stuff. Guys, those of you that know, but those of you that don't, this is not a sales tax. So this tax in the 1934 NFA on these types of prohibited items like machine guns, like short-barreled rifles, like short-barreled shotguns, like sound suppressors, which is nothing more than a muffler, which I have very bad tinnitus. I really wish that these things were more accessible. In my home state of Illinois, without certain FFL or law enforcement credentials, you can't have them at all. So interesting side note on that. You go to Europe, there's places that it's illegal to go hunting or do certain shooting practices without one. Yet here, you've got to have the blessing of a bureaucracy. So let's go back to 1934. Check this out. At the time, they know they can't make these things outright illegal, so they create this tax stamp, which is basically you going and paying a tax to own it. It was $200. In today's money, 2025, that's between $4,650 and $4,700. So check this out. You go buy something that at the time probably cost $5 or $10, and you'd pay $200 of an additional tax to any other taxes just to have the right to have it. Now that's a little bit insane. So in today's money, some of the folks in Congress that are against this bill, that are looking at this from the perspective now of, well, this is taking billions of dollars out of, say, the welfare system or other funding sources. If the original intent of Congress was to hold true from 1934, we should be charging each other $4,000 to $5,000 of tax every time somebody wants to buy one of these things. They were trying to make it impossible for average people to want to buy one. Criminals don't care. We'll come back to that. But the average person, this is more than a person earned in a year in those days, wasn't going to spend that kind of money. So no poor people, no average folks are going to have these things, just rich people and criminals or the government, right? That's very, very anti-American. It's just like a poll tax, right? This is just like after or even before the Civil War, where racist areas would say, hey, you want to vote, you got to pay the tax. And we did lots of that stuff in Chicago too, which was run by gangsters, right? I'm in Chicago now, well, on the outskirts, a very crime-ridden, crime-rich city where these unscrupulous things happened. Okay, so where are we at? So we've got this tax, $200, and people don't want to pay it. You know, it's not even about the 200 for a lot of us. It's that I have to have the blessing of the government. And now what else happens? You get fingerprinted, you fill out this form, and now it's happening faster, so that's great. But the narrative that I would like you to have some insight on is not just the money. It's not just that we're taking money from other funding sources. When we argue these sorts of things, we have to look, and when I say these sorts of things, I'm talking big political type problems. You could be right. You could be right in the eyes of the law. Like we could go get a couple legal scholars, a couple constitutional law professors, and they could agree with you. That's not how lawmaking and politics works. Politics and lawmaking is a game of convincing people deep in here where they feel. And if you look at what, say, Everytown USA is doing, it's no different than what you or I do. We are using emotions to connect people so that they want to listen and think and possibly change their mind. When we think about politics, and when I say politics, I'm talking big, even if it's a citywide thing, right? I want to lower the taxes in my community. I think something should change in our school district. I don't like the roads, up to state or federal level things. We've got to look at it like we're tree farmers. What do I mean by that? I'm just in Northern California. B and I were just out in Northern California, and we're going to a class, and we're driving past miles of cropland in the Central Valley. And you've got corn, you've got wheat, you've got different vegetables, and you've got lots of almonds and grapes, of course, and things like that. Well, almonds, grapes, these vines, these trees take years to develop. Too often, we look at this political game, and I'm calling it a game for a reason. We look at it like we're growing a vegetable garden. I'm going to plant it in April, and I'm going to start eating things in July and August. It's not how it works. We're driving past some of these fields where there's little itty bitty almond trees. And what was interesting, I noticed that the farmers were using the space between the trees to grow other crops. They're smart. They're like, we've got all this ground that we're not going to make a dime off of. In fact, we're just funneling money into it, protecting these little trees from pests and watering them. And we're not going to make any money for years probably. So we're going to use all this ground in between to grow vegetables. I thought that was pretty cool and shrewd. We've got to start planting trees. And in the interim, grow some crops. What do those trees look like? That's educating our kids. That's changing the ideological bullshit in our school systems. That's affecting who's on your city council, your school board. Why do I care about that? Because those people that are mayor and city council people, they go on to become your state rep. They go on to become a sheriff or a state's attorney. They go on to become a senator or a congressperson or a president. Usually these people don't do what Trump did, and they start, Biden was a great example. He spent years in the political system. We need to find people to feed into that system, and I'm not a big feed the system guy, but it's part of our process, right? We've got the three branches of government, and many people that work for years and years in that system spend years and years in that system. On a short-term level, we've got to do things like be able to articulate an argument. Now, an argument doesn't mean I'm going to scream and yell and smash things. It means I can have a cohesive discussion where I make points and I can validate the points and I can listen and I can be open-minded. Like if I'm talking with somebody that's super anti-gun, we're not actually having a conversation. If I'm like, just waiting to be able to make my point, and I know they're wrong and I'm right. Is it not possible that they have valid points? Is it not possible that you and I have a chance to grow and learn new things? And now here's a point that I try to make often, and I think served me well in my time working on these political problems. Most everybody I've ever met that hates guns, that hates a scary machine gun or a short-barreled shotgun or rifle or a dreaded silencer, most of those people hate those things because they don't want to see innocent people killed. So they've got this fear. It's like I don't want to go out in the ocean because it's deep and there's big waves. But if I have a life preserver, I know how to swim, I know how to read the current, I know what tide charts are, I maybe have a proper boat that's got a well-maintained motor, I can tame the sea, right? I still respect the sea, but I can tame it. And too often we are coming to these problems from a political stance like we're in the Civil War. I'm right, you're wrong, let's go to blows. And maybe there's a time for that for certain discussions. Maybe there's a time for that at certain points in history. But if we can't articulate ourselves and communicate both ways, we're not getting anywhere. So back to this thing. Now we've got everybody in the social media space, pro-gun, anti-gun, sharing about it, talking about it, people pissed off, people up in arms. And what many people in the gun space want, we just want it fixed, damn it, fix this, sign this bill, call your senator. The problem is we wait until we get a little bit of momentum, groundswell, and then we want everybody to do stuff. That works, right? That's gardening. We got to get back into that frame of mind of tree farming, long-term, long forecasted goals. That's what our founders did, right? In fact, John Adams, paraphrasing him, said at one point in the future, he was talking about the celebration for independence. He said, at one point in the future, they won't know who we are, and they're going to light off fireworks. I'm paraphrasing it. You can go read what he said exactly. They're going to have parades, and they're going to enjoy this thing that we today won't even get to do, but they will. That was like a true act of sacrifice to be able to foresee way down the road on the timeline of humanity that people, us, posterity, would get to enjoy it. If we start thinking like that, instead of just what's in it for me, kind of like Kennedy said, right? Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. How about instead of just your country, but what I can do for my fellow man, my neighbor, my son, my daughter, my grandkid? We'll start to see a marked change in our own behavior, the things that we consume. This morning, so I'm at home right now, I sat on the sofa, I'm scrolling the web, I'm drinking my delicious Ignis Lux coffee, I'm working hard, and I realized, man, like 45 minutes has gone by and I've done nothing of value. Not for me, not for my health, not for my family, not for my pocketbook, most definitely not for the world. I'm just soaking up stupidity off the internet. I could have been working on learning another language. I could have been working on studying something about our political process. I could have been doing push-ups, right? And there is a time to just chill out. But too much time is spent chilling out and not enough time focused on hard things. What do? Calling your senator, because now we're at the stage where the Senate has to approve this thing. Calling your senator helps. It really does. But so does calling your state representative. So does calling your mayor. So does calling all of these people farther down the food chain. And why? Well, at one point in time, I was the vice chair of the Republican Party out here in my area. And in that, you have access, right? It's like if you work at like the ballpark. You're not on the team, right? So out here, it's the Chicago Cubs. If I'm the guy that maybe is in charge of the parking garage, or I'm in charge of the concessions, or I'm in charge of the scoreboard, I don't have the same access to go in the dugout and that kind of stuff, but I still have access to the park that a regular person doesn't have. I might even know the manager because I see him in the parking lot. I might even know like some of the guys on the team because I cross paths with them in the back parts of the building. So you've got some access. And what does access buy you? Conversation. It buys you insight. It buys you maybe a little bit of a closer relationship. And that's just the facts of life, right? I have friends that own restaurants. Do I expect special treatment when I go there? No, but do I get it? Usually, right? Because they know me. So if you connect with these people that are closer to you in your community, the mayor, the state reps, state senators, judges, and you say, hey, this is Mick, and I really care about this thing that's happening at a federal level. I know that you personally aren't voting on it, but I know that you know people. It's important to me that you get this message out there. I think it's also important that as we talk about this message, and this is from a communication standpoint, we don't sound like dipshits. Nobody cares about what a dipshit has to say. Nobody cares about what some angry, loud, obnoxious voice has to say. Sound like you know what you're talking about because you've done a little research. Sound like you know how to get something done and that you care. You care about the big picture because that's what it all comes down to. The point of this republic is to create a space for liberty. I was doing a little research on liberty and freedom the other day. They mean different things. And this word freedom comes from a root word that means love. And liberty, libertas, interesting. In Roman times, libertas was only given to like rich, wealthy men. The women didn't get it. The slaves didn't get it. And so when we created this place with liberty and justice for all, as our pledge says, it was like, it doesn't matter if you came from over here, over there, down there, you can come here and we're all on this even playing field. That's what we want. We want an even playing field where my voice matters, but we're not in a democracy. A democracy is a little different than our republic. The republic exists because if it's just the loudest voices get what they want, that's a mob. That's a mob. That's no different than what happened to our cities the last few years as mobs tore through them. A democracy is elected officials controlled by mobs, right? This is paraphrasing, but go read on this stuff. Versus the republic, elected officials who should be smart, intelligent people making the best choices, not because we're too stupid to do it, but I don't have time to go read and research all these things. I don't have time to get into every little nut and bolt. So I'm going to pay somebody to go do it for me. And we elect the person that we feel represents our core values. If we're really getting down into the weeds, this tree planting thing I'm talking about is an ongoing process through life. And some people are better at it. Some people are better at it because they make it a priority. The things that we care about are our priority. And when we just from time to time walk by the garden and we look down in it and we see a couple berries or fruits growing and we just rip them out, that's kind of like people seeing what's happening right now in Congress. And I'm going to pay attention right now because there might be something tasty for me. That's not how we should be handling this. Now, some of you are going to say, don't tell me how to exercise my rights. Cool, don't do it. I'm only telling you what I learned from years of being in the space. I don't fancy myself as a YouTuber or a gun tuber. I'm a father. I'm a lover, a brother, a son, a neighbor, a citizen. I do shoot firearms. I'm a protector by nature. And most importantly, I want to live a long, full life. Full means that we get to express and do the things we want to do without infringing upon the rights of others. Telling me that I can't protect my hearing is infringing upon my God-given rights. Did God give me a right to a suppressor? No. But he certainly didn't give some pukes in a far-off city the right to stop me from doing it, especially when my heart is filled with good, as yours is, and we're not looking to hurt anybody. Remember the function of our government in that the truth of it is it exists for you. You and me make up this republic. We citizens need to think about one last point. Civic virtue. I talk about this as often as I can. This is not a Mickey thing. This is an ancient Rome and Greece thing. This idea of the citizen living a virtuous life, not in a religious sense, but in the sense of what I do, I understand affects the greater good. So I will live in a manner accordingly, knowing that what I input into the community will directly affect what is outputted. Be well. Don't be dickheads. Hope this was beneficial to you. If there's anything that popped in your head as we're talking or that you disagreed with or you didn't like, throw it in the comments. I'd love to have a discussion on it. If there's something that you would like us to talk about more, hit me up. CarryTrainer.com. CarryTrainer.com has got all of our upcoming classes. We're in Ohio. We're in Tennessee. We're in Washington State. We're in Pennsylvania and a few points in between. We'll be throwing up 26 classes soon. Hey, Heart Jiu-Jitsu, my local town, one of the best places to train jiu-jitsu, self-defense for kids, for women, for men, for families. Go check them out. And lastly, Ignis Lux Coffee. Ignis Lux is Latin for firelight. It's the fire that burns in your guts. Go get it. We roast it ourselves. Is it the best coffee? You're damn well right it is. Excellence in every bag. Be well. Bye now.